Welcome back to the deep dive. I have to warn you, before we even start, that today is going to be, well, a bit difficult.
Difficult? That's an interesting choice of words to open with.
I mean, difficult in the sense that it is going to demand a lot of mental flexibility from everyone listening. From you, from me.
A lot of unlearning, maybe.
A lot of unlearning. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Usually, we take a topic, right? We unwrap it, we look at the pieces, we learn some cool facts.
It's a neat package.
A very neat package. But today, we are taking the entire map of the ancient world, and I mean the map you learned in grade school, the map you see in the back of your Bible or your history textbook.
The one we all just take for granted as, the ground truth.
And we are essentially setting it on fire.
It's a radical dismantling, that is for sure. A complete paradigm shift.
We are diving into the research of Dr. Khaled Waleed, specifically from his channel Almighty Covenant, or Mithaq al-Khaliq. And I'll be honest, when I first opened the stack of research, I genuinely thought there was a typo in my notes. I thought, okay, surely he means 1400 BC, or surely he's talking about the Nile Delta. But no, he means exactly what he says, down to the letter.
It is not a typo. It's a fundamental re-examination of history, of theology, and critically, of geography.
Right.
Dr. Waleed's work challenges the foundational narratives of the Torah and biblical history. It suggests that what we think we know about the Exodus, King David, King Saul, the Holy Land itself, it might all be the result of a massive millennial-old fabrication.
The big idea here, and this is what I'm calling it, is the Great Inversion.
The Great Inversion. I like that.
It's the theory that the identities of the good guys and the bad guys have been swapped. The dates have been shifted by, 1,000 years?
At least 1,000 years. And that's the part that usually stops people in their tracks. We aren't talking about a carbon dating error of 50 years or some minor academic squabble.
No, this is huge.
We are talking about sliding the entire timeline of the prophets from the Bronze Age straight into the Persian and Hellenistic periods. It's a monumental claim.
So buckle up. We're going to try and reconstruct this historical crime scene. We're going to look at what the source calls the identity theft of King David,
the geographical heist of the Exodus,
and the character assassination of King Saul. And we are going to do it all using the linguistic and geographical clues that Dr. Waleed has compiled.
The mission for us today, for you listening, is to act as forensic auditors. We're not here to say this is definitively true or false. We're looking at the evidence, at the receipts that Dr. Waleed provides.
Let's start with the map, because if you can't agree on where something happened, you can't possibly agree on what happened.
The foundation of everything.
So, the story of the Exodus, Moses, Pharaoh, the parting of the sea. In the standard model, this is Egypt, the land of the pyramids, the Sphinx, the Nile River.
Correct. That is the consensus view. It's what you'll see in every documentary, every movie.
But Dr. Waleed says, hang on, stop. Before you even get to the story, look at the word in the text.
He directs us to the Quranic term, mis. Now, in modern Arabic, mis means Egypt. It's unequivocal. If you buy a plane ticket to Cairo today, you are going to miss her.
Right. Case closed.
Well, Dr. Waleed argues that applying this modern political label to an ancient text is a huge category error. It's like assuming the word Gaul always and only means modern France. The meanings of words shift.
So what does Misr actually mean if you strip away the modern country of Egypt? What's the root?
If you go back to ancient Semitic roots, Akkadian, Aramaic, early Arabic, the root MSR implies a boundary, a limit, a borderland.
Like a garrison town, maybe?
It can mean that. Or often a civilized region or metropolis that's separated from the open desert, the wilderness. It's not a proper name for a nation-state like France or Germany. It's a descriptor.
So it's like referring to the frontier or the city, not New York City.
Exactly. Or the capital. It's a type of place. And Dr. Waleed's argument is that in the context of the Exodus, Misr refers to the blessed land itself.
The Holy Land.
Specifically, the urbanized, settled areas of Palestine. Gaza, the region west of the Dead Sea. That was Misr relative to the desert that surrounds it.
Okay, hold on. I need to pause here because this is a massive pivot. He is saying the Israelites were not enslaved in Africa. They were in Palestine the whole time.
That is the claim. The bondage, the servitude, it was all happening within the boundaries of the Holy Land, or at least the area immediately adjacent to it. They weren't building pyramids for an Egyptian pharaoh on the Nile.
That changes everything. If Misr is Palestine, then the Exodus isn't this epic march from Africa to Asia. It's a local movement.
It's a movement from the Blessed Land, which is Misr, towards the desert, away from civilization. And this brings us to The Crossing, the most famous scene in movie history.
Charlton Heston, the staff, the walls of water, the Red Sea.
Right. They cross the Red Sea to get to the Sinai Peninsula. That's the story we know.
But I'm guessing Dr. Waleed has a problem with that, too.
He says, look at the text again. The Quran refers to al-Yam, which is often translated as the sea, sure. But it can also mean any large body of water, a lake, a river. Dr. Waleed identifies this geographically not as the Red Sea, but as the Dead Sea.
The Dead Sea, the lowest place on Earth.
Specifically, the area of the Lysan Peninsula. If you look at a satellite map of the Dead Sea, you'll see it. There's a large tongue of land, Lysan, in Arabic, literally means tongue, that juts out into the water.
I've seen that. It almost cuts the sea in two.
It does. And in ancient times, depending on water levels, this could be a fordable point, a land bridge, or at least a narrow choke point. The geology fits.
So the trajectory of the Exodus is completely different. It's west to east. They're leaving the Palestine area, crossing the Dead Sea Rift.
And entering.
Jordan.
Precisely.
Really?
They are entering the mountainous regions of what we now call Jordan. Petra, South Jordan. This matches the geological descriptions Dr. Waleed highlights in the text areas of salt, bitumen, harsh, almost volcanic terrain.
Which is very characteristic of the Dead Sea Rift Valley.
Much more so than the sandy dunes of the Sinai connection we often imagine.
Okay, my brain is redrawing the map. It's a shift north and east. But here is where I get stuck. Every story needs a villain. The Exodus needs a pharaoh. And pharaohs are, well, they're Egyptian kings. If the Israelites are in Palestine, who is the pharaoh?
This is where the timeline shock happens. It's the second big punch. In the standard history, the Exodus is maybe 1400 BC, maybe 1200 BC. Ramses II is the usual suspect.
Right, the guy with the big statues, Mr. Egypt.
Dr. Waleed says, no, forget Ramses. Look at the geopolitical reality of the region in a different time period altogether. He identifies the pharaoh of the Exodus as Darius I.
Darius, the Persian king? Are you kidding me? The guy who fought the Greeks at Marathon?
That is the one, the Achaemenid king.
But Darius reigned around 500 BC. That is... My math is not great, but that's almost 1,000 years later than the biblical Moses is supposed to have existed.
And that is the absolute core of Dr. Waleed's thesis. He argues that the timeline has been artificially stretched by later writers, by medieval chronologists, to create this deep, misty antiquity where there wasn't any.
Wow.
He posits that the events of the prophets are much, much closer to us in time than we've been led to believe. They're not in the Bronze Age. They're in the Iron Age.
So in this theory, the pharaoh isn't an ethnic Egyptian with a funny hat. He's the emperor of the known world.
Exactly. The Persian Empire controlled Misr, Palestine, and Levant. The King of Kings, Darius, would have been the supreme authority over that land. Dr. Waleed suggests that pharaoh, in the Quranic sense, functions as a title for this kind of tyrannical, absolute ruler who claimed divinity.
And the Persian kings certainly projected that kind of power.
They absolutely did. So this would mean the Israelites weren't building pyramids. They were subjects of the Persian imperial machine. Maybe they were involved in other monumental projects, building roads or fortresses, but the context is completely different.
It brings the story of Moses out of mythology and into the era of recorded classical history. You have Herodotus writing at the same time.
It puts it on the same map as the Greeks and Romans. It's mind-bending. But Dr. Waleed connects this to the prophet use of Joseph as well, right?
He does. He has to make the timeline work.
Yes. If Moses is in the era of Darius, which is around 450 BC, let's say, then Joseph, who came generations before him, is linked to the era of Cyrus the Great, roughly 550 BC.
Cyrus, the guy the Bible actually calls Messiah, or Anointed One, in the book of Isaiah, the one who freed the Jews from Babylon.
The very same. Dr. Waleed draws a powerful parallel between the story of Joseph, a man of God rising to high power in a foreign Gentile court, and the historical relationship between the Jewish exiles and the benevolent Persian court of Cyrus.
So it compresses the timeline. Instead of these prophets being separated by centuries of silence, it becomes a cohesive arc within the Persian period.
A single, continuous narrative.
Okay, I want to go back to one linguistic clue you mentioned in our pre-show notes, because I think it's really important for this geographical argument. The phrase EB-0198.
Yes. This is a crucial piece of evidence for Dr. Waleed regarding the location. It's one of his strongest points.
So, can you set the scene for the listener? The Israelites are in the wilderness. They've just been miraculously saved. God is feeding them with manna and salwa, which I think is quail.
Heavenly food, basically.
And they get bored. They start complaining to Moses. They say, we remember the fish we ate in Misr for free, and the cucumbers, the melons, the leeks, the onions, and the garlic.
They want their old food back. And Moses replies with this command, Ibitu Misran.
Which is almost always translated as, go down to Egypt. As in, go on, get back to the country we just left.
It sounds like sarcasm. Like, oh, you want good food? Fine. Go back to slavery and see how you like it.
But that's not Dr. Waleed's reading.
Not at all. He analyzes the verb abitu. It comes from the root hbt, which means to descend, to fall, to drop.
Yeah.
He argues it's not just about geographical movement from point A to point B. It's a command to drop this ambition, to lower yourself.
Drop the ambition of death.
Drop the ambition of returning to the Holy Land. To miss, which in this model is Palestine. Remember, in this reconstructed narrative, they just left Palestine, they were commanded to fight for it, and they refused. They were cowardly.
The story of the 12 spies.
Right. And because of that refusal, they were banned from it for 40 years. So they're in the desert, and they start dreaming of the good old days back in Miss.
Ah, so when they complain, Moses isn't sarcastically saying, go back to the country of Egypt. He's saying, you are stuck here in the desert. Drop the delusion that you can just waltz back into the high garden of Palestine. You are now in the lower lands, the fallen lands.
Precisely. You have lost the privilege of the blessed land. Now you must wander in the lowest earth. And geographically, where are they? They're in the Jordan Valley, the Dead Sea Basin.
Which is literally the lowest point on the surface of the earth.
Hundreds of meters below sea level. Exactly. So Ibitu is both a physical description, you are literally descending into the Rift Valley, and a psychological command. Lower your expectations, humble yourselves, you fail the test.
That's incredibly powerful. The language works on multiple levels. And the wandering itself, the 40 years, where does that happen?
According to this research, it's not the Sinai Peninsula. Dr. Waleed places the wandering in the vast southern deserts of Jordan, extending down through the Tahama region of Arabia and all the way to Hadramaut in modern-day Yemen.
That is a massive, massive area.
It is. And Dr. Waleed frames it as a quarantine, a 40-year spiritual and physical re-education camp.
Wow.
The generation that had the satanic mentality, as he puts it, the cowardice, the refusal to fight, the deep attachment to the pagan ways of the Persian Empire, that entire generation had to die out.
It's a cultural reset, a hard reboot.
A very hard reset. They couldn't enter the Holy Land until they were stripped of all that baggage, and a new, tougher, more faithful generation had been raised in the hardship of the desert.
Okay, so we have moved the map, we have shifted the clock forward by 1,000 years. Now we are leaving the Persian era, and we are entering the 300s BC. The Persians have fallen.
Alexander the Great.
He has swept through the known world and died young. His generals, the Diadochi, are fighting over the pieces of his empire. This is the Hellenistic era.
Correct. The era of the successors. A time of immense chaos and warfare.
And this is where Dr. Waleed drops his next bombshell. A claim that is, if anything, even more shocking than the last one. He says the Quranic king, Talut, who is identified as Saul in the Bible, is actually Ptolemy the First.
Ptolemy Soter, the Macedonian general who became the founder of the Ptolemaic dynasty in Egypt.
I need you to walk me through this very, very slowly, because my brain is short-circuiting. Saul is a Benjaminite tribesman who loses his donkeys and gets anointed king. Ptolemy is a sophisticated Macedonian Greek general who conquers Egypt. How on earth are they the same person?
It's a huge leap, I know. But let's follow the evidence Dr. Waleed presents. Let's start with the name itself, Talut.
Talut.
Dr. Waleed looks at the etymology, the phonetics. In English, we might hear the word tall. In French, the name Ptolemy is pronounced Ptolemy.
Ptolemy. Talut. Okay, I can hear the phonetic bridge there. It's not exact, but it's close. And doesn't tal also mean height or hill in some Semitic languages?
It does, but the phonetic similarity is just the appetizer. The main course is the Quranic description of Ta'alim.
Okay.
In Surah al-Baqarah, when the prophet of that time, Samuel, in the biblical tradition, announces that Talut has been chosen as king, the elders of Israel object. They say, how can he have kingship over us when we are more entitled to it? And he has not been given any abundance of wealth.
They don't like him. He's an outsider, or he's not from the right family, and he's not rich.
He's not from the expected lineage.
Well.
But the prophet answers them with a very specific justification. He says, Allah has chosen him over you and has increased him abundantly in knowledge and physique. Ilm and jism.
Knowledge and body, okay.
Let's look at body first. Jism. Physique. Ptolemy I was a general in Alexander the Great's army. not just any general. He was one of the Somatophylakes, the 7 elite bodyguards of Alexander.
The secret service of the ancient world.
You physically had to be an elite specimen to hold that rank. These were the toughest, strongest, most capable warriors in the entire Macedonian army. He was a quintessential warrior king.
Okay, so check mark for physique. That fits perfectly.
Now for knowledge. Ilm. This is the clincher for Dr. Waleed. What is the single most defining legacy of Ptolemy first? What did he create that changed the world forever?
Alexandria. The city itself, the lighthouse, and
The library.
the Great Library of Alexandria, the Mauseon, the Temple of Muses. Ptolemy didn't just build a library. He institutionalized the gathering of all human knowledge in one place. He sent agents across the known world to buy, borrow, or forcibly copy every scroll in existence.
He wanted to download the entire internet of the ancient world onto papyrus scrolls in his city.
That is a perfect analogy. Dr. Waleed poses the question, who in all of human history fits the description of a king given an abundance of knowledge better than the man who founded the world's first and greatest universal library? When you put it like that, it's a very compelling connection. So when the Quran speaks of Talut's authority, it's not just about his muscles or his military skill, it's about his intellectual supremacy.
Yes. The 2 pillars of his rule are military might and supreme wisdom. Dr. Waleed even interprets the ark, the tabut, mentioned in the story, which is said to bring sakina, tranquility, reassurance, in this context. It's a metaphor for the divine heritage of knowledge, the collected wisdom of the prophets that was preserved and housed in this library.
But wait a minute. If Talut is Ptolemy, then in this version of the story, he's a hero, he's a believer, chosen by God, he's wise, he's strong.
Yes, absolutely. He is the righteous king.
But Saul in the Bible is a complete disaster. He's portrayed as paranoid, he's deeply jealous of David, he tries to have him killed multiple times, he consults the Witch of Endor, he falls on his own sword. He's a tragic, failed king.
This brings us to the next section, the inversion, the heart of the matter. Dr. Waleed calls this the Great Switch.
The Great Switch.
He argues that the scribes who compiled the books of the Bible centuries after these events didn't just record history. They actively rewrote it to suit a very specific political and theological agenda.
They slandered him. They assassinated his character.
A complete character assassination. Dr. Waleed argues that because Ptolemy was not an Israelite, he was Macedonian Greek, a Gentile in their eyes, they could not accept him as the righteous king chosen by God. It didn't fit their narrative of exceptionalism.
So what did they do?
They turned him into Saul, a flawed, mentally unstable, mad king who serves only as a dark prelude, a placeholder for their true, ethnically pure hero, David.
It's a smear campaign.
Yeah.
Okay, he was the first king, we have to admit that, but he was crazy and God rejected him anyway.
Exactly. And to pull this off, they had to do some clever cutting and pasting. They had to move some stories around. And this is where the river test comes in. This is a crucial piece of forensic evidence in this historical investigation.
The river test. I remember the story from Sunday school. Gideon's army.
Right. If you open the Bible to the book of Judges, chapter 7, you get this story. Gideon is about to face a massive Midianite army. God tells him his own army is too big.
Right, because then they'll think they won by their own strength.
Precisely. So God says, test them. Gideon takes them to a river. Most of the men get on their knees and put their faces in the water to drink, like dogs. They fail the test. But a small group, just 300 men, scoop the water with their hands to their mouths, staying alert. They pass.
And with those elite 300, Gideon wins the impossible battle. It's a story about quality over quantity. Very heroic.
A classic biblical hero story. Now open the Quran. Go to Surah al-Baqarah, the same chapter that talks about Talut. You find the exact same story, the army on the move, the river, the test about how you drank the water, the scooping. But who is the commander?
It's not Gideon.
No, it is Talut.
Talut, so it's the same event.
It appears to be the identical event. But here's the critical difference. In the Quranic version, do the Israelites pass the test?
Well, based on the pattern we've seen so far in the Quran, usually the children of Israel are getting scolded for something. So I'm going to guess no.
You'd be correct. The verse says, and they drank from it, except a very few of them. The vast majority failed. They disobeyed Talut's direct command. They show their lack of discipline and faith right before the big battle.
So Dr. Waleed's argument is, the real historical event happened under the command of Talut, who is Ptolemy. The Israelite army largely failed the test of discipline. But the later biblical writers took that story.
They lifted it.
They stripped it from Talut, gave it to a completely different, purely Israelite character, Gideon, and then flipped the ending so the Israelites look like the elite, hyper-disciplined 300 heroes.
That is the inversion in a nutshell. They stole the valor of Talut's true, faithful companions, and they pasted it onto a fictionalized version of their own history to build up their national mythology.
That is a staggering claim. It implies the Book of Judges.
Oh, well.
It's historical propaganda.
History is written by the victors, or at least by the scribes who survive to write it down. Dr. Waleed suggests they also played similar games with the villain of the story, Jalut Goliath.
Right, Goliath, the giant from Gath.
Dr. Waleed links the name Jalut to Goliath, of course, but he also suggests a possible conflation or deliberate confusion with the name Gideon, or his other name, Jerubbaal, in the biblical text. It gets complex and linguistic, but the main point is this. They took the heroes and made them villains, and they took the villains and made them heroes.
All to center the Israelite tribe as the sole protagonist of history.
And this manipulation, this inversion, becomes most critical when we get to the biggest protagonist of all, King David,
the slayer of Goliath.
The great king.
So if we are in the 300s BC and Talut is Ptolemy, then David is a contemporary. He's living in the Hellenistic world of warring Greek generals.
Yes, and this is probably the most controversial and most challenging part of Dr. Waleed's entire research. He asserts unequivocally that David was not a Jew. He was not an Israelite.
Okay, I can just hear heads exploding across the country right now. David is the very definition of Israelite identity. The Star of David is on the Israeli flag, the House of David. Jesus in the New Testament is called the Son of David. How can you possibly separate David from Israel?
It seems impossible, I know. But Dr. Waleed again says, ignore the tradition, ignore the story you've been told, and look at the primary text. He points to the Quran, Surah Al-Ma'idah, verse 78, and I want to read this carefully. It says, "Cursed were those who disbelieved among the children of Israel by the tongue of David and Jesus, the son of Mary."
By the tongue of David.
Dr. Waleed asks a very simple, logical question. Does a man curse his own tribe in the third person like that? Does he say they are cursed by the tongue of David? Or would the text naturally say something like, and David cursed his own people for their disbelief?
It sounds distant. It sounds like an external judge, not an internal critic.
Exactly. It's formal. It's separated. The source argues that this phrasing is a clear linguistic signal of separation. David was distinct from the children of Israel he was judging. So what was he? Dr. Waleed describes him as a Palestinian Adamite Arab believer.
Let's unpack that phrase. Palestinian Adamite Arab believer. What does Adamite Arab mean in this specific context?
It means he belonged to the indigenous primordial line of monotheists, the line that traces back to Adam, Noah, Abraham, that existed in the land of Palestine before, and parallel to the specific tribal lineage of Jacob, who was named Israel. He was a local, a native son of the Holy Land, from a different branch of the family tree.
So the narrative Dr. Waleed constructs is this. You have the Israelites. They are under the command of their divinely appointed king Talut, who is Ptolemy. They are facing the armies of the tyrant Jalut, or Goliath. They reached the river.
They fail the test.
They show their weakness, their lack of faith. They become cowardly. The Quran quotes them as saying, "We have no power today against Jalut and his forces."
Right. They give up before the fight has even begun.
And then, out of nowhere, from the ranks of the believers, suspects this young man, David. He is not one of the cowards. He is a true believer. He takes up the challenge. He takes the sling. He kills the tyrant.
And because of that single act of pure faith and unparalleled bravery, the Quran says God granted him the kingdom and the wisdom. He inherits the throne of Talut.
So David becomes king over the Israelites, but he is not of them.
Correct. He is their savior, but he's an outsider. He saves them despite themselves. But later, centuries later, when the scribes are writing their national history, they can't have that. That story is unacceptable.
You can't have your greatest king, the founder of your golden age, be a foreigner. You can't have the man who saved you be, of all things, an Arab.
So what do? You naturalize him? Posthumously?
You steal his identity.
You write a new genealogy for him that links him to the tribe of Judah. You create the House of David as a tribal ethnic construct. You take this universal monotheist hero who belongs to all believers, and you turn him into a narrow tribal ethno-nationalist hero who belongs only to you.
It is the ultimate identity theft. It's hijacking a prophet.
And it perfectly explains why David would curse the disbelievers among the Israelites in the Quran. He was their king, but he saw their corruption. He saw their tendency to twist the law. He stood against it, but history, or at least the fabricated history, swallowed him whole and made him their mascot.
This brings a whole new profound meaning to the battle of David and Goliath. It's not just underdog versus giant, it's believer versus tyrant, with the so-called chosen people standing on the sidelines refusing to fight.
That's the core of it. And Dr. Waleed anchors this battle geographically at a very specific, real place, Ain Jalut.
The Spring of Goliath, or Goliath Spring, it's a real place in the Jezreel Valley in Palestine.
It is a very famous historical site. And Dr. Waleed points to what he calls a poetic historical rhyme, a mirror event. In the year 1260 A.D., at that exact same spring, Ain Jalut, the Mamluk armies of Egypt, led by Baibars, defeated the Mongols.
And the Mongols were the unstoppable force of destruction in that era, the scourge of God.
They were the Gog and Magog of their time. The party of Satan, as the source would put it, spreading corruption and death wherever they went. And their westward expansion was stopped, cold, at Ain Jalut by believers.
Wow.
Dr. Waleed argues this wasn't a coincidence. It was a divine replay of the original battle. David versus Jalut, the Mamluks versus the Mongols. The forces of faith and order stopping the forces of chaos and tyranny at the very same gate.
That gives you chills. It makes history feel cyclical, not just linear and random.
It connects the dots between the ancient and the medieval in a way that standard history just completely ignores.
So, let's take stock. We have the geography moved. We have the timeline shifted forward 1,000 years. We have the identities swapped. But my question is a practical one. How do you pull off a lie this big? How do you convince the entire world for 2,000 years that Saul was a bad guy and David was a Jew and the Exodus was in Egypt?
You have to control the information, you have to control the narrative, and most importantly, you have to destroy the evidence to the contrary.
You have to burn the receipts. The
Yeah.
library.
The Library of Alexandria.
We mentioned it earlier. Talut, who is Ptolemy, built it. It held, what, 700,000 volumes? It was the ark of all human knowledge.
And then it burned.
The story of who burned it is so contested. We usually hear it was Julius Caesar by accident during his siege of the city, or maybe zealous Christians later on, or the Muslim conquest later still. Everybody blames everyone else.
But Dr. Waleed implies the burning was not an accident at all. For the fabricators of this new history, the library's destruction was a geopolitical and theological necessity.
If you want to rewrite the past, you have to burn the primary sources.
Exactly. Imagine if the true census records of Ptolemy's kingdom were in there. If the true genealogies of the local Palestinian Arab tribes, including David's, were in there. If the detailed military maps of the Exodus from Palestine to Jordan were in there.
The inversion couldn't hold. The whole story would fall apart.
The new narrative, the one being crafted by the scribes to legitimize their ethnic claim to the land and the prophetic lineage, would be exposed as a fraud.
So the burning of the library wasn't just a tragedy for science and literature. In this theory, it was the foundational crime that enabled the fake history to take root and flourish.
It created a vacuum of knowledge. And as Dr. Waleed puts it, it dragged humanity back 1,000 years. We entered a dark age where a fabricated, politically useful truth replaced empirical, recorded truth.
And Dr. Waleed even critiques the Bible's version of the David story itself as part of this cover-up, the famous chapter of 1 Samuel 17.
Yes, he does a close reading of the text. He points out how the Bible spends an inordinate amount of time describing Goliath's armor, the bronze helmet, the coat of mail weighing 5,000 shekels, the bronze greaves on his legs, the bronze javelin between his shoulders. It's incredibly, almost absurdly detailed.
It's very cinematic. You can picture the movie scene.
But Dr. Waleed views this as fluff, as narrative misdirection. The writers are trying so hard to sell the underdog Israelite story, the little shepherd boy with a sling against the walking tank, that they over-embellish the threat to make the victory seem more miraculous.
It's like a fisherman telling a story about the one that got away. The fish gets bigger and bigger every time he tells it.
Exactly. Whereas the Quranic account of the same events is very sparse. It focuses on the moral and spiritual test, the river, the test of faith, the cowardice of the many, the bravery of the few, and then the decisive strike. It doesn't fetishize the armor or the size of the giant. It focuses on the transfer of authority from the tyrant to the true believer.
It is a lot to process. We are essentially outlining a theory that accuses the foundational texts of Western civilization of being a sophisticated, politically motivated, cut-and-paste job.
A very sophisticated and arguably very successful cut-and-paste job. One that has defined borders, sparked wars, and shaped the destinies of 3 major world religions for millennia.
So let's try to put this Humpty Dumpty back together again. Let's recap the whole thing. If Dr. Waleed is right, what does the true timeline of events actually look like?
Okay, let's reconstruct the chronological sequence according to the Almighty Covenant research, step by step.
Phase 1, the Persian era. Let's say roughly 550 BC down to 450 BC.
Right. In this period, we have Prophet Joseph, rising to power under Cyrus the Great. Then a few generations later, you have Prophet Moses, confronting the tyrannical power of Darius I, who is the Pharaoh. The Exodus happens not from Egypt, but from Palestine, eastwards, across the Dead Sea, into Jordan.
And the wandering happens in the Arabian deserts for 40 years.
A quarantine to purify the people. Okay, phase 2.
Phase 2, the Hellenistic era. Now we're in the late 300s BC, maybe 350 to 300 BC.
The satanic generation, the cowardly one, has died out in the desert. The new generation of Israelites returns to the region of the Holy Land. Alexander the Great has just conquered the world and died. His general, Ptolemy I, takes control of a region. He is the Quranic king Talud.
The man of physique, jism, and knowledge, ilm, the founder of the Library of Alexandria.
Phase 3, the battle.
The tyrant Jalut, Goliath, who probably represents one of the other rival Hellenistic generals, a force of chaos in the wars of the successors, threatens the land. Talut leads the army to confront him. They reach a river.
And the Israelites, by and large, fail the test of discipline. They show their cowardice.
Phase 4, the rise of David.
David, the young Palestinian Adamite Arab believer, steps forward when everyone else hangs back. He slays Jalut at the spring of Ainjalut. As a reward for his faith, God gives him the kingdom and wisdom. He inherits the mantle of leadership from Talut.
And he becomes king of the whole region, including over the Israelites. And phase 5, the cover-up.
This happens much later, centuries later. The scribes, compiling their holy books, invert the entire narrative. They claim David as their own, writing a fake genealogy for him. They demonize the Gentile king Talut, turning him into the mad King Saul. They steal the river story and give it to Gideon. They move the entire Exodus to Egypt to obscure the true geography of their failure and wandering.
And the Library of Alexandria burns, conveniently destroying all the records that could have contradicted their story. The perfect crime.
Sealing the truth in ash.
It fits together. I have to say, whether you believe it or not, you have to admit, the pieces lock into place in a disturbingly logical and coherent way.
It's an internally consistent theory, and it answers so many lingering questions. Why are there so many contradictions between the Bible and the Quran? Why does the mainstream archaeology in the Sinai Peninsula find no evidence of a massive Israelite migration? Why does King David in his own Psalms sometimes sound like an outsider, a stranger in his own land? Dr. Waleed's theory offers a kind of unified field theory for all these anomalies.
And the why behind it all is simple. It's power, it's legitimacy.
It's always about land and legitimacy. If David was an Arab, if the chosen people failed the test and were saved by an outsider, then the entire theological claim to the land, to the prophetic heritage, it changes completely.
It flips the entire script of the last 2,000 years.
It suggests that the current political and religious map of the Middle East, and indeed the world, is based on a foundational case of stolen identity.
You know, we usually end these deep dives with a neat little takeaway, something you can use to sound smart at a dinner party. But this is not a dinner party fact. This is a stare at the ceiling at 3 a.m. kind of fact.
It absolutely is. It's unsettling.
I just keep thinking, if this theory is even partially true, if a society can lose the true identity of its greatest king, King David, and the true location of its foundational event, the Exodus, what else did we lose? What else have we gotten wrong?
And that really is the final provocative thought, isn't it? If the geography of the Holy Land and the identities of its most famous kings have been shifted by 1,000 years and moved across borders in our history books, what other absolute truths about ancient civilization are actually medieval or classical fabrications?
Are we reading actual history? Or are we just reading the very successful fan fiction of a scribe from the Middle Ages who wanted to make his tribe look good?
And what was in those 700,000 scrolls, beyond just history? What science, what philosophy, what poetry, what truths about the human origin and our place in the universe were deliberately or accidentally lost in those flames?
AB2 Mishrem, drop your assumptions, lower your certainty. That seems to be the only way to even begin to approach this material.
Indeed. Look at the map, look at the text, with fresh eyes.
We want to thank Dr. Khaled Waleed for this incredible, truly brain-melting research. If this has piqued your interest, you can check out his channel Almighty Covenant or Mithaq al-Khaliq for the really deep dive into the linguistics. He goes verse by verse, word by word.
It is absolutely worth the watch if you're interested in this. It is historical and linguistic detective work of the highest order.
Thanks for listening to the deep dive. We will see you next time. And try not to get lost in the desert.
Keep questioning everything.